Imagine playing a game of chess and suddenly you find yourself in a losing position. Losing is no fun in chess, but it's a reality every chess player faces at some point. The best players, however, know how to escape these situations by turning a loss into a draw or even a win. In this video, I'll show you some of the moves to save a chess game, showcasing situations where players have made remarkable recoveries. Okay, let's get to the first situation. Black's to play here and they play d4, attacking White's knight. At this point, White perhaps intends to retreat the knight, but hold on, it's pinned by Black's bishop. Many players may believe that they no longer have the knight and would like to play something like bishop to d2 to trade, but now it's White who's in deep trouble. However, in many of these situations, White can attack the bishop with their side pawn, which is the a pawn. This can also happen on the other side. White plays a3. Now, if Black takes the knight, White can simply recapture the bishop in return. Of course, Black could recapture and White would happily take it back, which leaves White in a favorable position. The other thing Black can try when White attacks the bishop is they can retreat. But guess what? White can attack it again, and now it's the same situation. If Black takes the knight, White takes the bishop, and it's just a trade and White's happy. But of course, if Black goes back, White can move their knight to somewhere safe now because the king's not pinned by the Black's bishop anymore. So remember, if you find yourself in a situation like this where you're about to lose a piece, usually you can save the piece by doing something like this. Alright, so here's the next situation, and this should look familiar. Here's Black's play. Queen takes g2, and White's now in trouble. Here, White is going to lose his rook, and do something really stupid like this. But this is really wrong. Here, the best move for White to play is queen to f3. It's defended by the knight, and it's defended by the rook. It can also happen if White has a bishop on e2. White can play to f3 to protect the rook. The next situation we have is very similar. Notice it's almost the same except White knight is already developed. So now Black takes g2. White has to move his rook somewhere because the rook's still being attacked. White might play to move to f1 here, which is a really bad choice. Instead, White should play to g1 because now White rook is attacking the queen, and the queen usually only has one place to go, h3, and White can chase the queen by playing the rook to g3. Here, White got the rook activated in the game. Here, White might have lost a pawn which maybe wasn't worth it, but a lot of the time you'll be in a decent position if you do this. So remember, if queen ever comes down and takes the pawn, you can just move your rook over. It can also happen here, but one thing that you have to keep in mind is to make sure your knight's defended to make this work. In this case, the queen is defending the knight. If that's not the case, you might have to find another solution, otherwise you might be losing your knight. Alright, so here's the next situation. Black plays the move. d1 check slams it down the board. And White's like, oh no, I'm in trouble. I'm getting checkmated, because if I take the queen, the rook's gonna take me and I'm done. That's it. But this is a really bad choice, because whenever you have a back rank threat like this and you can't take the piece because the other piece is coming in, what you can do is sometimes block this check with another piece. And in this example, White rook on e7 can just come back and the checkmate's prevented. Because if the queen tries to take it, guess what? This rook's now involved, and White can just win Black's queen if Black does that. So this is the idea that a lot of people forget about. They forget that if you have some other piece that you can swing it back. You don't have to just immediately take that piece, because then you do lose. Because if you take it first and now try to come back, it's too late. And you don't have that extra rook anymore to defend it back. So you have to do it right away before you make any trades, because you need the rook to defend it, and Black's rook now doesn't really play a role until White has two rooks against Black's queen, and they're okay. This is a really good little technique to defend against the back rank checkmate. Also, a little bonus tip here, be careful when you get to the end of the game like this. Sometimes it's wise to push one pawn forward to give your king a little escape route, so if something like this happens, you can just run away with your king. In this next situation, it's White's turn, and they play the move queen to e2, attacking Black's knight. Black starts to consider their options. At first, it might seem that the knight's trapped and will be lost, as all escape squares appear to be covered. However, this is not the case. In a situation like this, where a knight's being attacked by a queen or another piece like a bishop, Black can play a move like d5 to defend it. Even though White has the option to capture the pawn en passant, this actually works in Black's favor. After the en passant capture, black can recapture with the knight, effectively saving the piece. The pawn that was initially restricting the knight's movement is now gone, opening up new possibilities. Keep this idea in mind for similar situations. It can also work with the f-pawn, so a move like f5 could serve the same purpose. If white captures en passant, black can take with the knight. Depending on the position, this tactic can be a good way to save a knight that's become overextended. Even when the knight appears to be trapped, this way you can often rescue it. Here's another situation. It's black's turn and they play knight to b4. Let's say white didn't see this threat, being focused elsewhere, and played g4 to attack black's bishop. Black captures the pawn on c2, forking white's king and rook. At first glance, it might seem that white is in a lost position, about to lose a rook. However, in many such situations, white can often gain 2 pieces for the rook. Here's how it works. White plays knight to d2. Black takes the rook, and white can capture the bishop. If black recaptures, white's attention should turn to the knight. Notice that the knight is now trapped. It can't escape. White can now either move the king to capture the knight, or play bishop to d3 and capture it with the rook. Either way, white ends up with a knight and a bishop or rook and pawn in exchange for the lost rook. This is actually a favorable trade for white, putting them in the lead. The key thing to remember is that even when faced with a knight fork like this, you always have to ask yourself if you can capture the knight afterwards. If you can also gain another piece in the process, like the bishop in this case, you can come out ahead. This is why the move king to d2 was crucial. If white had played king to e2 instead, after the exchanges, the knight would have been able to escape. By keeping the knight trapped, white ensures compensation for the lost rook. Remember, as long as you can capture the knight and potentially another piece, you should be in a good position. Both king moves to d2 and e1 work here, but d2 is slightly better. The key is to keep the knight trapped and plan your moves accordingly. That's all I have for you today on ways to survive a losing game. I hope these tips help you turn tough situations around. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe.